I've always had a soft spot for Ed Miliband, or as I knew him as Ted Miliband years and years ago. A man once the standard bearer of Labour's idealistic left, and now a political relic on the verge of being relegated to the back benches. The point is, whether you like his politics or not, he's a good man, and he's an efficient and a competent speaker. In contrast to so many other performers in the House of Commons. But with a spring reshuffle looming, the Energy Secretary now finds himself in a precarious position as Keir Starmer reconfigures his government to prioritise economic pragmatism over environmental idealism. And if reports are to be believed, Miliband's tenure is soon going to be extinguished, much like the funding for his cherished GB Energy project. To understand the forces that have pushed Milliband to the margins, one needs to first grasp the evolving principles and priorities of Starmer's government. When Labour swept into power, GB Energy was touted as a flagship policy, a public entity dedicated to investing in clean energy and accelerating decarbonisation. But the cold reality of government has set in, and Rachel Reeves, ever the fiscal hawk, is ruthlessly scrutinising every commitment. She's checking every word that's been written, even in her own CV. And the original promise of £8.3 billion for GB Energy has already been diluted, with only £100 million allocated for the first 2 years. The latest signals from the Treasury suggest that £3.3 billion earmarked for local energy projects may now be repurposed for more immediate economic concerns. Miliband's woes don't end there. His long-standing opposition to airport expansion has placed him at odds with the government's broader economic growth agenda. And the decision to green-light Heathrow's third runway, and now the expansion of Gatwick, has left him publicly and politically isolated. Once the firebrand who threatened to resign over Heathrow's expansion in 2009, Miliband is now a muted figure forced to toe the party line as his colleagues push ahead with infrastructure projects he has spent his career opposing. This shift is emblematic of a deeper transformation within Labour. While Starmer's government remains nominally committed to the net zero agendum, there is a growing recognition that green policies must not come at the expense of economic stability, and the recalibration of the National Wealth Fund, once devoted solely to decarbonising heavy industry, to include investments in defence, signals the new priorities. Reeves' drive to stimulate growth, coupled with a global landscape that demands increased defence spending, means that green policies are being pushed down the pecking order. Milliband, a figure who has always embodied the Labour's left-green ambitions, now finds himself increasingly out of step with the government's direction. And there is speculation that Starmer's Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, could orchestrate a wider retreat from green policies in response to the rise of Reform UK's anti-environmental rhetoric. And if that happens, Milliband's position is entirely untenable. His defenders argue that Britain cannot afford to abandon its climate commitments, especially given the escalating environmental crisis, and critics see him, however, as a relic of an era when Labour could afford to indulge in grand ecological visions without grappling with the economic realities of implementation once they are in power. Even within his own party, there's a growing frustration at his inflexibility. The Transport Secretary's remarks that she is not flight-shaming eco-warrior behaving. She's not going to behave like a flight-shaming eco-warrior was widely interpreted as a swipe at Miliband's obstructionist stance on aviation expansion, and the parallels to his past failures are striking. Eat a bacon sandwich. In 2010, he bested his more electorally viable brother David to become Labour leader, only to lead the party to a bruising defeat in 2015. Now he risks being cast aside once again, this time not by an electorate, but by his own colleagues, who see him as an impediment to Labour's post-election recalibration. As the government struggles to balance its economic, environmental and security priorities, Miliband's days in office appear numbered. Whether he jumps or is pushed remains to be seen, but if the rumblings from within Downing Street are any indication, the spring reshuffle may well be his final act in frontline politics.